I saw some 3-tiered trays on Amazon and decided I would attempt building one myself. So I'm just using some maple that I already have to build it out of. So I just have to start by cutting it down to size. Now, since I'm using rough lumber here, I have to use the joiner and the planer just to get it to the thickness that I need. And I'm going to head on over and cut it down to size. So I'm cutting the trays as well as the legs right now. I'll be sure to list all the dimensions down below. Now for the trays, I didn't want them just to be a flat board, so I used the router just to give them a rounded over edge. As you can see there, it just gives it a little bit more detail. Now to cut the bottom angle on the legs, I'm just putting the miter saw at 20 degrees. Now you'll see I won't go into great detail on this because, spoiler alert, these legs actually did not work out. Here it is. I just have it kind of mock set up here. This isn't finished. I didn't hook these together here. But as you can tell, the bottom 2 trays fit nicely in here. Those will fit good. However, when I go to put in this third one, don't know how well you can see this here. I'm going to turn it to the side. There are 2 bars right here. So if I put that in, I mean, that is not well supported. Somebody's going to go grab a cookie and end up with everything flying off the end. So that is not going to work. Rather than scrapping the whole project, I decided to rework the legs and go with just a whole different concept, more like the ones that I see on Amazon. I just use this fancy tool that I found in the shop and am marking a circle on either side and then just using that same tool to make a line right down the middle. So these legs will be much longer than I actually need them to be, but that's okay. I think it will be easier to just cut them longer, and then I can come back and cut them to the size that I need in the end. Now I'll be using a bandsaw to make all of my cuts. If you're a beginner, a jigsaw is probably the way to go. It's going to be inexpensive and a lot easier to learn how to use. Now with the legs done, what I did is I just drilled a small hole that would fit a nail in there just to hold those 2 together. Now my plan here was just to have them held in together tight so that I could sand them and try to get those edges as close to matching as possible. So I'm just smoothing all the areas that are a little bit rough and jagged and trying to make it look like a nice complete circle. Using the drill press, I'm just pre-drilling holes that don't go all the way through for the round pegs that will hold the trays up. Now on 2 of these at the very top, I will drill all the way through so that the top peg will go all the way through the first 2 legs and then will be screwed into the outside one. And here I'm prepping the round peg that will go in the very top. So I'm just going to pre-drill in either side so that when the screw is put in there, it can just screw right into it. And now with everything drilled, it's time to assemble. Although not shown, I did do a protective clear coat on everything before I put it together here. So now I'm just putting glue in the holes and putting those pegs right in. Now I decided to help hold in that round peg, I would put in a really small brad nail in through the outside. And then I'm just removing any excess glue that squeezed out. Because I already have the finish coat on, that excess glue came right off. Now, some of you may have seen the tiered tray that I built before for one of my child's birthdays. I really liked it and just decided I wanted to try something slightly different and see if I couldn't just make this design a little bit better. There's not much to this here, but you really have to think everything through as you're putting it all together just to make sure that you're putting it together in the right order. Now here's a close-up on the nails. You can see a lot of areas they came through and didn't even get the peg on the other side. I don't know that I would recommend doing that step. Now with the stand done, I just put it in place and decide where I want it. Then I'm just going to mark the trays where they line up with those wood pegs. And then I'm going to run over to the router, and using a roundover bit, I'm just going to drill on either side of the bottom of the trays. The thought here is that it will click in to those round pegs and hold that tray in place. Without something like this, the legs on the stand will continue to go out and your trays will end up falling. And here you have it. A tray stand that folds up nicely, and within just a couple minutes, you've got your stand all set up and ready to use. So now that it's all finished, I just kind of wanted to walk through parts of it with you, show you some of the details and just a little bit more of the functionality, just so if you are going to build your own, you'll kind of understand how each part works a little bit better. And then I thought I would let you know the pros and the cons of this project. So overall, I really like the design and the idea of it. The concept is great. You have a 3-tiered tray here that you can put all sorts of things on for events. And then you can easily take it apart here. And it stacks up so small. Now, because of the circle in the leg, it nicely folds together. I can easily store that in one of my cabinets. I also really like the idea of the routered edges on these trays so that it can click in and hold the legs in where they need to be. Now, let me show you on this. It did not work ideal as I had hoped. So the concept is great. The legs go in here, and where they are routed out, it just sets in that round peg and holds it in there tight so that the legs don't continue to go out, spilling out everything that's on your tray. Now the downside is, as I say, it did not work out as well as I'd hoped. So with the slightest bump here, it's already out and the tray can come falling down like this, dropping all of your items that are on there. So that's not really ideal for me. Now, you could try using different router bits. You could also take on the back side and you can put something in here, whether it be a nail or a screw, or you could get something that's a little bit nicer to put on there to potentially keep it from coming out and sliding out, if that, hopefully that makes sense. Something else to point out here, when attaching and creating the legs here, I made sure to have one inside board on one side match up with the outside board on the other, and did the same with the other side as well. The reason for this is so that these two boards on this side are the same distance apart as these two, just giving it a very symmetrical look. One other item that I wasn't as happy about how it turned out was this round area up here. First of all, it was very big. I think it didn't need to be quite this big, so it might be something to look at the design and see if you can make it just a little bit smaller so it's not so large up here. And I wasn't a huge fan of the homemade look, I guess you would call it. Since I used the bandsaw, the cut is not a perfect circle. It's jagged and rough, and you can see that it's just not that perfect circle. So if I wanted to try making it again, I think I would use the CNC machine. The reason I didn't use the CNC machine to start with is that most people don't have one. So I know that I would be totally slammed in the comments for it. And using the bandsaw, that's something that either people have a bandsaw or you could use a jigsaw and do the exact same thing. Now, I'd be interested to compare this one to one of the ones that I saw on Amazon that inspired me to make this. My guess is that the wood on this is going to be a lot better than something that you would buy on Amazon, but they probably use some sort of a CNC machine to make theirs, so I'm betting that theirs is going to look a lot more crisp. I'd also be interested to know how stable theirs was compared to the one I made here. So I'm actually going to go onto Amazon and order one of the ones from there and do a comparison and take a look at the one I made compared to the one that they made, and we'll see how they compare and see if it's going to be a better project for you guys to build or just to purchase the one straight from Amazon. So watch for that video, and in the meantime, happy building.